Here's my, what I might call my YouTube wall. And it's got some signs and some tools, a leather apron that a friend helped me make. This is my business side, and this is the ministry side. I teach people blacksmithing and things. The Blacksmithing Pastor is my YouTube channel, which you might know about because maybe you're watching this video there right now. But this is more me starting a business and actually selling some of the things that I make. Wheel out my forges. This is my big coal forge. It's got wheels and it's got a built-in water tank here, a little bullet box for just storage. But this forge is something special. It's got a super sucker hood. I just love the way it looks. I made couple tools there, a rake and a poker. You can see some modifications. This is a little wind block with a little pass-through area for longer bars. Fire extinguisher on the back. But I made the hood for it, and that hood folds down, folds in half. And so you can wheel it out the door or wheel it into a trailer, and then you can put the full stack up. It's got a really nice hand crank. This is a Champion forge, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I have this little boardwalk. I don't have a paved area or anything like that, but this will get me to the grass, at least where I'm less likely to be digging a hole. But all my forges can be wheeled out to the boardwalk, and one of the projects that I've been trying to get going here, I have a lot of hats, and so I'm trying to make a hat rack for my hats out of these hay forks. You can see there's different ways of bending them so that you can have a hat rack. Here's this one has 4, so 4 hats. The plan is a barnwood structure. I'm going to cut it out in the different states that I've really enjoyed living in. So I'm going to have one for Oregon, Washington, Iowa, and Kansas. And then these will be mounted to those. Over here, this is my power hammer. And my power hammer is really kind of an ironic story. This is probably from 1905. It's a carry hard power hammer, which is kind of sought after. It's a 30-pound hammer right here. This big block on the top, it says US steel. And this hits about, I don't know how many beats a second, probably 6 beats a second with a 30-pound hammer. And so it can literally do like 4 hours of work in 40 minutes. And when I was at Nelson Pioneer Farm and Museum in Iowa, they had almost the exact same power hammer, and I always wanted to get it running, and it never did get running. But now, moving to Kansas, I have my very own. This is a 100-year-old motor from the time of like Nikola Tesla. I put this cage around it because mice kept getting in there and chewing on the wires, so it's not as pretty as it would be, but they don't make motors like that anymore. It's a repulsion induction motor. This is before they had power hammers. I'm sure they had something like this. This over here is the anvil for it, but this contraption here has a 50-pound hammerhead, and it's connected to a foot pedal and held up with springs. So when you drop your foot on the foot pedal, you bring down a 50-pound hammer. It's called a treadle hammer. Usually some people would call the power hammer a trip hammer. So trip hammer, treadle hammer. This gives you one hit. This gives you a whole lot of hits. This is my main anvil. It's a Peter Wright anvil, 125 pounds. You can see just went ahead and left the bark on the stump. Brush holder here. This big ball and chain is actually a hold down tool. I just flopped the big ball over the top. Recently made these tool holders, and I have a set of punches that I made for making kissing horses horseshoe hearts. This is an anvil that I've gotten since coming here to Kansas. I call this anvil Choo Choo. Choo Choo is 350 pounds of what's called a bridge anvil. If you're not familiar, bridge anvils were the kinds of anvils that they used for the railroad and you know, different kinds of big projects like that, industrial projects. And so this has two hardy holes, these tool holding holes, and they go all the way through the thick part of the anvil, all the way to the bottom. And it's a big, fat 1.25 inch hole. This is a little vise. If you look at it this way, it's easier to see. That's a vise, but I welded the shank on it, and it's upside down. And you can spin this wheel to open the vise or close the vise really quickly. And it's really good for holding like a railroad spike to put grooves for the handle or different things. It holds it right on the anvil, and it's big enough and heavy enough. It's not going to bounce out of there. But Choo Choo has got some big hammer holders, big catch for tools. I recently made a bunch of these tools with my friend Deke. This is a hammer cupping tool. This is not what you would do, but if you were working on a hammer and you heated it up and you put it in there and pound it on the back, it would make one side of it round. This is a little ladle making tool that I made. My friend Deke has a forging press, and so I could make spoons or ladles or various things. His forging press was super handy for moving a whole lot of metal. Plus this is a bolster plate for making hammers. It supports the cheeks of the hammer. I don't know. So on a hammer like this, this part where my thumb is pointing, that's called the cheek. And so when you make hammers, you use a tool called a drift. The drift stretches the inside of the hole. This is a drift that I made with these batch of tools with my friend Deke. But the drift goes through here. Let me go ahead and move some of these things. So you can see how that goes in. So when you're making the hammer, while you're forming the inside of the hammer, you'll have the head, and you need to support the cheeks while you're pounding that drift in. And so that shape, that rounded shape here, supports the cheeks and doesn't get them crushed while you're doing all that pounding in and out. The cheeks make it so there's more surface contact with the handle, makes it stay on there easier. And when you drive the drift in, then you can actually, with a hammerhead on the end of it, you can kind of wield it just like you would a hammer, because it's like a handle for the hammer. Only saw one other bridge anvil in my life, and it had some of these big swedging tools, like this guy here, and this guy here. And a really neat guy saw what I was doing and donated this stump anvil that I'm going to reforge to go in the hole on Choo Choo here for finer work stuff. I have one more anvil. This is a hay Budden anvil made in Brooklyn, New York. It's actually the same kind of anvil that the Looney Tunes cartoons use. The shape of it. This is a homemade stand. I actually recently made this armor maker's hammer when I was forging at Deeks, when I made all those other tools that I'll probably do a video in more depth later on about. This is my little bandsaw station. I've got this Dewalt Bandsaw with speed control and this little stand that it just sits in. I can pull it out of there and just use it, but this little knob here, you can just turn it on, turn it off, and you can use the table to cut. Above that, this is an old, to keep an old man from rolling off the bed, device that I'm using as a shelf that folds down. I have a case that I set here that hooks up to these cameras, and I have different stations for those cameras. So up in the ceiling there's this gantry system that I made where you can see I have a light, and on a Lazy Susan thing there's power, there's cables for the camera, a little place for the GoPro cameras. This giant spinning deal here is for the 360 camera. This is the 360 camera. This is kind of my main camera area. Over my main anvil, I have this downward facing camera, and then this folds down and it projects a view that's sort of like this, just down the anvil, so you can see what I'm doing when I do teaching and instruction type stuff. Memo pad. This is for making sure that I'm getting the right shots for my videos. The TV up in the corner for seeing what the output is from my case with the cameras in it. Into my vise. Got another camera spot there. But this vise is what's called a post vise or blacksmith's vise or leg vise. It's got this leg that goes all the way down, and that protects the screw here. The screw is easy to wreck on a vise if you're pounding away on it. These vices are almost indestructible, although people out there will give them a hard time sometimes. But this vise, you see how fast it moves open. The screw is really aggressive, and that's so that when you have the hot metal and you're trying to close it up on there, you can get work done in a hurry. Anvils have this hole called a hardy hole, square hole like that, and I have built into my vise table here a hardy hole, and this beautiful cone here my cousin Casey made for me. It's great for doing hoops and things like that. It's like the horn of an anvil, but you can see a little clearer at it. It's got this little slot here that he put in there for me for a little space for tongs if you're doing hoops after a certain size. And here's an old grain elevator bucket that is there for holding various tools and things. I have twisting wrenches. Here's my main twisting wrench. It just kind of sits, but this it's got two holes for twisting two square or round bars together. And it's got a handle on both sides, which gives you more leverage and really helps you to have a straighter twist. So if I was taking a, well, let's see, you put that on there and twist around. This big plate here, it's welded to that so that when I'm standing on it, it's not going to go anywhere and it's not actually stuck to the ground. Recently made this angle grinder rack, not anything too fancy, but it sure is handy to have. This little cord keeper part and then a little spot for my die grinder and power. This is my primary gas forge. It's an old horseshoe forge, and it's got this, it's, you know, 3 sides can be open, so you can put like horseshoes in the big wide door. And you know, it's all rigged up to hook to a propane tank outside. Again, everything that every time I use the forge, I have to do it outside. It's my little work table. It's an old hospital table cart that I modified, so it holds my punches and things like that. One of the projects that I plan to be working on is making copper roses, like with it'll be steel where the green parts of the rose would be, like the leaves. You can see I've forged a couple leaves, and then this long bar here is going to be the stem, and those blanks are the copper leaves for the rose, and they're going to be textured and cleaned up and all assembled. You make like a big rivet on the end there, and then you put all the petals on and lock it all down. And I got some pre-cut blanks, and I think this is going to be a really cool project someday. Got the Last Supper up here in copper. It's my welding table. Has a fold-out part to it. It's basically a cabinet. There's a plasma cutter and a Campbell Hausfeld welder back there. Welding hood and whatnot. This is my original coal forge. I made it out of an old barbecue that somebody threw away. It's got a little coal hopper on the side, made out of an old mailbox. Little, like a bathroom timer for the blower, which this thing's powered by a just a little hair dryer fan. The hair dryer's in there. Little clinker breaker here. I hope you can see. It's kind of the end of this. Lift that up and you can dump the ash out. This is my future forge to be. I've had parts for this thing for quite a while. This is an old industrial heat treating oven. Johnson Gas and Appliance Company in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I've got this blower, electric blower, I need to hook up to it. I'm making something called a ribbon burner, which is a very efficient kind of burner that's going to take a little bit to make. This is called an English wheel. It is for making metal that's flat, round, in 2 different ways at once. This shield here, my stepdad was working on that, but it would be a way that you could bend that. Like if you're making something round, the metal wants to go one way, but it doesn't want to go 2 ways. And so this hand crank here adjusts the height. This hand crank here, and there's different dies here for that. And so you put the metal in here and you drag it back and forth, and there's a technique to it that you can make something just puff out and pillow out on one side. Different school lockers here, drill organizer, detail light, and a lot of hardware. Have a sheet metal brake and a little pan brake. This little air hammer texturing thing that I inherited from my stepdad. Mechanics tools and a lathe in the back here, and some different lathe chisels there. This is really the wood shop side of things. So this big bench here that goes the full length, that is on wheels. And so I can fold down the metal shop, so to speak, and open up the wood shop. And back here I have a planer joiner, a big wooden bandsaw, wood lathe, table saw, router table, stuff like that here. The radial arm saw over here. Recently got a real welder. Been doing flux core for a while. But this is a Hobart Beta Mag. It's about 20 some odd years old, and I have the rest of the parts to get it working. So it's kind of a project I've been chipping away at over time. This is a 2x72 belt grinder that I have started making and uses a treadmill motor in the back there. Treadmill motors are DC, and DC motors you can do speed control with, and so that is a pretty neat thing. But this is made from like old parts of a box taper here in the back. This is skateboard wheels. This is an old trailer hitch that I got to fit in there. It takes these big old belts, 2x72 belt grinder belt. Here I got some of those. Something I really need to actually finish. It was working for a while, but the motor I had for it was bad. It's my welding table. Has a fold out part to it. It's basically a cabinet. There's a plasma cutter and welder back there. Welding hood and whatnot. It's kind of the bird's eye view of the shop here. I do intend to get pretty serious about making videos. Been building up to it for a long time. And so we'll see where things lead. Blessings on everyone. Bye now.